This verdict has sparked a debate on what many perceive as elite privilege and double standards within our justice system. One pressing question remains: would the outcome have been the same if the accused were a conservative? After weeks of explosive testimony, a music mogul has been acquitted of the most serious charges.
Hello, and welcome to That News Show, where we discuss the latest facts, fakes, and hypocrisy as reported by the legacy media. Let's roll the tape.
ABC News reports that Sean Diddy Combs' family reacted outside the courthouse following the verdict. If a conservative figure were in Combs' position, would the media response be as subdued, or would we see relentless outrage and demands for accountability? Here we have a music mogul, a prominent figure in the cultural elite, acquitted of serious charges like racketeering and sex trafficking, despite weeks of graphic testimony and interesting video evidence. This outcome reinforces the belief held by many Americans that there are indeed two justice systems, one for the powerful and another for everyone else. This moment prompts a critical question about America's justice system. Let's do this.
So, Bernarda, if Combs does stay in custody, how much jail time do you expect he would actually serve?
So in terms of if the judge does decide that Sean Combs remains in custody pending sentencing, the judge will ultimately determine what his sentence.
Sean Combs was acquitted of the most severe racketeering and sex trafficking charges, despite a wealth of disturbing allegations and testimonies. In this instance, the acquittal on the most serious charges indicates that the system functioned correctly, at least to some extent. The fact that Combs' defense team did not call any witnesses, relying instead on the weaknesses in the prosecution's case, underscores how effectively the system can be manipulated by those with ample resources. The evident double standard in our justice system is stark. The narrative might differ significantly if the defendant were a conservative or Republican figure, likely facing relentless media scrutiny and prosecutorial vigor. Celebrities and cultural elites often receive the benefit of the doubt, whereas ordinary Americans or conservative figures face presumed guilt in the court of public opinion even before a verdict is reached. With Combs still facing over 60 civil lawsuits and the judge yet to decide on his pre-sentencing release, the saga is far from concluded. Media coverage typically emphasizes emotional courtroom scenes and family celebrations, overlooking the jury's decision based on insufficient evidence for the graver charges. This selective outrage and inconsistent application of justice undermine public trust and perpetuate the notion of a two-tiered system, one for the elite and another for everyone else. Yet this outcome is unlikely to reassure those who perceive a recurring pattern of impunity among the elite and biased media coverage. It's also crucial to remain vigilant against prosecutorial overreach and the misuse of sweeping federal statutes to compensate for weak evidence. This outcome is not unusual in cases involving powerful figures within the left-leaning entertainment industry, who often manage to avoid severe consequences.
I think it does impact his legacy because we have to talk about this in addition to talking about his 3 decades as being a pop culture icon. You know, this is a human who has touched every facet of business, of industry, you know, politics, film, TV, music, Broadway, spirits, fashion, you know, but we also now have to talk about this case and the role that that plays and that legacy. And I think it's significant because unfortunately people are going to be able to unhear some of that testimony that they read, and they're most certainly going to be able to unsee that video footage from that 2016 intercontinental incident between him and Cassie Ventura. And I think that that's going to be part of the conversation moving forward.
Sean Combs' legacy is now intricately linked with the legal and moral questions that have emerged recently. The acquittal of Combs on severe charges, despite the high standards of proof in federal racketeering cases, has sparked bipartisan criticism of a perceived two-tiered justice system. This skepticism is intensified by the notion that outcomes might differ if the defendant were a conservative or Republican, suggesting a media and legal bias that undermines trust in our institutions and highlights a need for greater accountability. Ultimately, Combs' story serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of unchecked influence and the limits of fame. The trial not only spotlighted Combs' alleged misconduct, but also a long-standing tolerance for questionable behavior, reflecting what some conservatives view as a moral decline. Both prosecutors and defense attorneys might adjust their strategies based on this precedent. Libertarians might warn against governmental overreach, yet the uneven application of justice influenced by wealth and power is undeniable. The recent trial has cast a long shadow over his accomplishments, particularly due to the disturbing testimonies and video evidence from the 2016 incident involving Cassie Ventura. With the public's growing distrust in both political parties, the outcomes of this saga will significantly influence our views on justice, celebrity, and the responsibilities of those with power. This case has exposed significant flaws in the justice system, especially in handling cases involving influential figures. The political implications are clear. While Democrats may oppose changes that could weaken their position, Republicans might advocate for reforms to ensure transparency and accountability as the 2024 elections near.
It remains to be seen what that looks like, but they did release a statement earlier today thanking the alleged victims in this case for coming forward, saying it's not easy to share those harrowing stories. And we know that the prosecution's star witness was Cassie Ventura, Combs' ex-girlfriend. Her attorney spoke outside of court shortly after the verdict, and he says that he's proud of her courage. He says that she is in a good place and she's happy with this outcome. Take a listen.
The network's focus on Ventura's statement and her attorney's praise, while understandable, risks overshadowing the legal complexities and the jury's reasoning. Engaging more robustly with legal analysts who can dissect the implications of the split verdict, as well as voices that challenge the prevailing narrative, would enhance the objectivity of the broadcast. Fierce storytelling with courtroom sketches and footage of family reactions effectively conveys the human impact, yet sometimes the editorial choices veer toward dramatization at the expense of sober legal analysis. There is room for improvement in diversifying viewpoints. This selective sourcing can shape public perception, particularly when the coverage leans heavily on survivor advocacy without presenting the defense's perspective or the jury's rationale for acquittal on the most serious charges. The network's coverage would benefit from a more critical examination of the broader context, namely the recurring pattern of elite figures in left-leaning cultural industries facing serious allegations, but often evading the harshest legal consequences. Fact-checking is essential, especially in a case where the jury requested to review Ventura's testimony about multiple alleged assaults, including the 2016 hotel incident and other episodes involving threats and violence. ABC's reporting accurately reflects the emotional toll and the significance of Ventura's testimony, but it could better contextualize why the jury found insufficient evidence for the gravest charges, despite the dramatic accounts presented in court. For instance, ABC emphasized the prosecution's narrative and support for Ventura, but gave less attention to the defense's arguments, which centered on the consensual nature of the relationships and the lack of direct evidence tying Combs to trafficking. As the case moves into the sentencing and civil litigation phases, coverage that interrogates both the strengths and shortcomings of the prosecution, the defense and the legal system as a whole will be essential in restoring public trust and ensuring genuine accountability. Regardless of a defendant's fame or connections, coming forward in such high-profile cases requires tremendous fortitude, given the intense scrutiny and public skepticism that often accompanies accusations against powerful figures in entertainment. In terms of expert analysis, ABC's inclusion of legal contributors and cultural commentators adds depth. Her harrowing accounts and the now infamous 2016 assault video form the emotional core of the proceedings. When evaluating ABC's reporting, it's crucial to consider not only the emotional impact but also the balance and objectivity of their presentation.
Racketeering conspiracy, because first off, when Racketeering RICO came out, it was more for mob bosses or gang activity to try to get an enterprise, hold them accountable and not let individuals get off simply because they're not being taken into account with co-conspirators or using their businesses in order to uplift their enterprise, their criminal.
Some advocate for narrowing its scope to prevent prosecutorial overreach, while others call for stricter enforcement to ensure no one is above the law. Figures like Combs, who have built empires across music, fashion, liquor, and media, often blur the lines between personal and business interests. While some legal analysts view acquittals in racketeering cases as evidence of the judicial system's integrity and caution against overusing broad statutes, others perceive them as examples of how well-connected individuals, particularly those affiliated with certain cultural institutions, often evade severe penalties. This not only erodes trust in the justice system, but also undermines the livelihoods of working Americans disconnected from the decisions of the powerful. For the average household, the impact of these legal battles is tangible. In contrast, the current administration's emphasis on law and order, business transparency, and prioritizing American workers marks a significant shift. Scandals and legal uncertainties involving key figures can reduce consumer confidence, decrease ticket sales, and deter investment in new projects. High-profile cases have financial repercussions that extend beyond the defendant's personal assets. The message to American families remains clear. The true cost of elite impunity is measured not in headlines, but in job losses, diminished savings, and the gradual erosion of trust in equal justice. Advocating for policies that favor Main Street over Hollywood is crucial for restoring faith in our economic and judicial systems. A RICO indictment can destabilize stock prices, partnerships, and sponsorships, affecting employees, investors, and pension funds connected to entertainment conglomerates. A tarnished celebrity brand can lead to layoffs, reduced 401k values, and losses for vendors and small businesses linked to the industry. The previous administration's superficial commitment to reform did little to address the systemic issues, often favoring celebrity donors and overlooking excessive behaviors. RICO laws established in the 1970s aimed to dismantle criminal organizations by targeting not only street-level offenders but also the top figures orchestrating illegal activities through legitimate businesses. This leaves us with so many things to consider. The last administration under Biden and Harris mastered this double standard, undermining trust in our institutions. This isn't justice, it's privilege disguised as fairness. If we fail to demand equal justice, what are we truly defending? Once again, we observe the powerful escaping unscathed, while ordinary Americans are urged to trust a system that consistently fails to hold its leaders accountable. If you're a celebrity with the right connections, particularly those favored by left-leaning institutions, it seems the rules don't apply. Imagine if a Republican or anyone associated with this administration faced similar charges. The media's relentless coverage and the public's outrage would be overwhelming. Be sure to comment below while dropping a like and subscribing. Until next time,